Hey, what's going on? So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to install a pre-hung door. I'm going to go through all the materials and the tools that you're going to need to do this and show you everything that I do to install a door. So here we go. So if you have somebody that can help you do this, it's much easier to do this with 2 people than it is with 1. Now, I've been doing this for 20 years, so I can handle it by myself, but if it's your first time, you probably want to have a hand doing this. Alright, so here's everything that I'm going to be using today. I'll have a full list of this stuff down in the description as well as links, so if you don't own any of these, you can pick them up for yourselves. But I'm going to be using a 6-foot level, a 4-foot level, maybe a 2-foot level, not really sure, but definitely the 6 and the 4, a hammer, a speed square, pencil, a small metal ruler. Oh yeah, you're going to need a tape measure, that's clipped to my pants. Gonna need ear protection and eye protection. I've got a finish gun with 2-inch nails, a circular saw, a compressor for the finish gun, and a hose, of course, and then shims. I like to use cedar shakes. These are actually like what they call them, I think, starter shakes. They're like a really low grade. You can buy them in a big bundle, and then I cut them down. They're really wide, like 6 inches or whatever, so I cut them down to be like 2 inches. We're also going to need a screw gun with a Phillips bit, as well as some 3-inch black screws. Unless your hinges are brass or silver or something, you're going to want whatever color screw matches your hinges. You're also probably going to want a multi-tool to cut the shims when we're done. You can use a knife, it just is a little more difficult. If you have one of these, it's way easier. You're also going to need a nail set. You're also going to need like a step stool or a ladder. I think this is going to be tall enough for what I need, but I might need a ladder. Of course, you're going to need the door that you're installing. And I'm going to be using these sawhorses because we have to cut down the door jambs a little bit. And these ones in particular are 4 feet wide, so they're wider than the door. So you just want to make sure that your sawhorses are wider than the door. If the sawhorses aren't wider than the door, if you've got like a picnic table or something you could put it on, or something sturdy. You can't really do this on the ground. You could stand it up on end, which I'll show you when we get into cutting it, but I gotta cut the jamb down, so I'll explain that in a second. All right, so the reason that we have to cut the jamb down is they send the doors shipped that they can be installed like rough-in construction. If you install them the way they are right now, there'll be a really big gap between the bottom of the door and the floor. So normally if you're installing these beforehand, you just install them, you put them right down on the floor, you get it all set, and then you can cut in your doors, or if it's carpet, it just butts up to it, however you're gonna do it. But I like to keep them down pretty low, so what I'm gonna do, these floors that we've installed are 1/2 inch thick, so I have to cut 1/2 inch off the bottom of the door jambs. So that's the first thing we're gonna do. And to do that, because the floor may or may not be level, so if you just cut 1/2 inch off of each side and the floor is out of level at all, then your whole jamb's gonna be crooked, or you're gonna have to raise it up and one side's not gonna be touching. So that's the first thing we're gonna do, is figure out exactly how much we have to cut off of each side. So I'm going to measure the door jamb, and it is 81 5/8. So what I can do, I have enough room here to stick my tape measure in, so I can put it right down on the subfloor, not on the flooring itself, and measure 81 5/8. Now, if you don't have enough room to do that, you can set it right on the floor and subtract how much the thickness of the flooring is, which is 1/2 inch. Which would make me 81 1/8. So I'm right on right there. Now the next thing I'm gonna do is take a 4-foot level. I gotta move this door out of the way a little bit. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do is take the 4-foot level, put it right on that mark, and I'm gonna mark it over here too. And I'll make that mark a little bigger so I can see it. We're gonna get covered by 1x4 trim, so it's gonna cover all of that. So what this does is now I measure down on both sides, and then I can pull down from the top of the door jamb to get my exact measurement in case this floor is out of level, like a 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch. I know this other door over here is pretty far out. This house is 1870, so things are kind of wacky. So this is 81 1/8 I'm gonna write that right on here. And that side's 81 and a 16th heavy. So now what I'll do is just write down those numbers on the side of the jamb, and then we'll bring this out on the sawhorses and I'll show you how to cut it. Okay, now that I've got my numbers written down, so this is the hinge side and this is the knob side. So now I know that I have to just put this number and this number on the respective sides on the actual door jamb itself. So 81 and a 16th plus is gonna go on the hinge side of the jamb, and 81 and an 1/8 is gonna go on the knob side of the jamb. So just make sure you write down the correct number on the correct side of the door jamb. Now let's take this outside, we'll mark it, and I'll show you how to cut it. All right, it's really bright out here, so hopefully you can see this, but I'm just gonna pull that number off the top of the door jamb. And this is the hinge side, so I've already written 81 and a 16th heavy. So I'm just gonna go 81 and a 16th heavy. Okay, so there's my mark, 81 and a 16th heavy. Now I'm just gonna use my speed square. I'm gonna throw on my eye and ear protection, and I'm gonna use my circular saw to make that cut. Now I just got to do the same thing on the knob side. Okay, so the next thing you're going to need is your hammer and nail set, and we're going to pull the pins out of the hinges and pull the door out of the door jamb completely. Now for the bottom one, you can't swing a hammer like this, so just flip your hammer sideways. And they might be a little tight, so you can use the claw end of the hammer and give it a little whack with your hand, and they'll come right out. All right, so I guess I need another tool, like a little flat bar or something, just to pull the staples out of that, which will allow me to pull this thing out. There we go. That just holds the door in place. Sometimes there's like a nail in there. Depends on your door, what you're working with. And this is kind of tricky to get off, but all right, there we go. Whoop. That didn't work. Wow. Crappy f***ing made thing. All right, so now I've got my bucket of shims. I'm gonna set this in the opening and kind of just put some shims in the top on either side to hold it in place. Helps if I have it the right direction. Okay, so now that it's just in place, these are just loosely in there, I'm gonna check to see how far away it is from the wall. So what I wanna do is have a 1x4 go right up to the wall here. So I could have it be a little closer and shave it down, but I don't want to be farther than a 1x4's distance away, because then I'll need to use a 1x6 and rip it down or have a space there, and I don't really like that. So I'm going to try to get it as close as I can. And basically to do that, I'm just going to measure on both sides, and a 1x4 is 3.5, and then I like to do a 3/16 reveal. So I need to be 3 11/16 from the corner to this edge of the door jamb on both sides. So these walls should be in plane with each other. You know, they're built at the same time, but I just want to make sure on both sides that it's good. So I got to move it that way a little bit. So I'm just going to loosen my shims up and push it over, make these ones tighter. Now it's really important to make sure that the door is flush with the drywall on both sides. So we're going to use the speed square, and I'm going to put it across there, and you'll be able to see, like, this is way out. It's got to go way in, right? So there we go. Tighten up those shims, make sure they're good. So you want to have the drywall and the door jamb all touching, so it's perfect like that. And I'm going to check it on both sides. Okay. All right, now I'm going to use the 6-foot level to get this nice and plumb all the way down so we can start shimming and nailing in the hinge side. Forgot to hit record. Okay, so since I forgot to hit record, let me just tell you what I did here. I used the 6-foot level so that I could plumb straight down from those shims at the top to the top hinge. And, you know, I got that jamb looking pretty good using the 6-foot level. And I put one nail in it just to hold it temporarily, and I can adjust it a little bit if I need to. And that one nail will be good. So then what I did was I took one shim and put it in from each side, one from the bathroom and one from the kitchen, so that they end up being flat. If you put them both in from the same side, they're tapered, and then the jamb will be all wobbly when you screw it in. But once you get it in place, you just pop a nail in it and that'll hold it there. Next thing I'm going to do is get a screw and a drill. I'm going to take out this screw and put a long screw in to replace it that will hold this into the stud. Not in these ones because that goes like into the drywall, but you got to come into this one and that will go directly into the stud because this is a solid core door. So there's a lot of weight to this. So I want to make sure that that's not going to go anywhere. All right, so I've got a 3-inch drywall screw. Pull that out. Okay, now obviously I used a black drywall screw because it'll blend in with this, you won't even notice. So if you're using like brush nickel hinge, you would probably want to use like a stainless steel screw or brush nickel if you could find one. If you're using a brass, you want to use a brass screw. Just whatever's going to match the finish of the hinge that you're using. I could pull these top shims out, don't need them anymore. So now that that top one's in, I'm going to work my way right down. Hey, if you're getting anything of value out of this right now, go down below, hit the thumbs up button, and subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell next to the subscribe button so you can be notified when I release new videos. I'm just going to go down to the bottom one and do the same thing, and then I'll do the middle one last. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. So again, just want to make sure that the door is good on both sides. Okay. Pretty happy with that. Okay, now that I got that bottom one set, I'm going to do the same thing and replace that screw, because what'll happen is when the door swings open, now the weight will push against the bottom of the jamb. So by taking this screw out and putting a longer screw in, it will help hold this in place long term. So the last thing for this side, we're just going to use the level and shim out the jamb till it touches. I don't want to make it bow out. I want it to be exactly straight. So we'll just shim that out till it touches, pop a couple nails in it, and we'll move on. I'll probably throw a screw in here too, just cause, but it doesn't necessarily need one in the middle. Now I noticed when I was installing these that the jamb was like pulling itself in on the top and on the bottom. So I added some shims here. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom just to make sure this is nice and perfectly straight all the way. And I'll pop a couple nails through that to hold those in place, and then we'll jump to the other side. All right, now I'm ready to hang the door, so we're going to jump onto the other side. I'm going to grab a pin, and I'm going to hold it with my thumb and put it up on the hinge. There we go. And then I'm just going to put the rest of them in and use a hammer to tap them down all the way. Okay, so now that that's in, you can see that the reveal looks good all the way down. Now, I think that when they route these in, they routed the hinges in too far because the gap is really tight over here. See how tight it is? And then on this side, it's really big. So after I set the door, I might mess with this and shim this out a little bit because that just seems too tight to me. And from the weight of the door at the bottom, it's actually like touching basically down here. So, but that's just my anal retentive personal preference. So I'm going to do basically the same thing I did on that side over here, but a little bit differently. I'm going to use the door and the reveal here as my guide rather than a level. Because if I just used a level and made this plumb, if the door was a little off or anything, it wouldn't be right. So I like to just use the door, the reveal here, the space between the door and the jamb, and use that as my guide to set it. So I'm going to start at the very top, just like I did on the other side. Shim this out. Actually, I need some bigger shims. And again, use the speed square to set it on both sides. Now on this side, because there's no hinge, you can just put 2 nails. There's no screws going on here. All right, there's not really enough room in here. I can't get far enough back to show you everything all at once. But basically, I'm trying to match the gap at the bottom with what I have at the top. And I'm just setting the shims right on the floor so I can like push it over with my finger and check. And that will get me pretty close. And what I'll do is I'll put 1 finished nail in, and then I can use a hammer to adjust them a little bit. The nail will be able to kind of make its way through. These things are pretty thin, so you can hammer them and adjust a little bit, and then finish nail it off when you're really good with where it is. And again, when you're ready to nail, just use the speed square to set it on both sides. I'll pop 1 nail in and check it. Now here's where that metal ruler I was talking about earlier could come in handy. So I could use this to get a very exact measurement. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that. The reveal is the same at the top and the bottom. I'm gonna pop a couple more nails in that, and then we'll do the middle. It's a little tight here, so I'm just gonna, pop a nail in it a little lower so that I can play with this and not be fighting this. So I'm gonna go a little lower than where the knob goes. And that should bow it in a little bit, and then I can shim it out to the door. Actually pretty good right there. Now before I nail that in, I'm just gonna use the 6-foot level to see how straight it is. And it seems pretty good. So we'll nail this in. Where do I want to nail that? Right there. And then you want to check with the level to see if there's any bows in or out anywhere, and if there is, shim those out. And it looks like I do have one right here, so I'm going to get a shim in here. Same thing, I'm going to just use a nail to hold it in place. And then shim it out till it's good with the level. That looks good right there. Put a couple nails in it. I'm just going to close the door and check and see how it looks. Has a nice even reveal all the way down, so we're good. Okay, so the last thing to do is to cut off all the shims. You can use a utility knife, but it will take you forever. So if you don't already own a multi-tool, I highly recommend picking one up. So basically you just cut these flush with the drywall and the door jamb. I actually like to kick them in a little bit just to make sure that they're not sticking out at all so they don't protrude and mess up me putting the trim on. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know down in the comments section. If you got anything out of this video, please give it a thumbs up down below. Consider subscribing to the channel for more how-to videos, and ring that notification bell next to the subscribe button so you can be notified when I release those new videos. All right, thanks for watching. See you on the next one. Bye. Ba 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 ba.